just did this, didn't we?
I used it up, I only drink maybe 10, 12 slops out of it, and then I just put it in there and keep it. But I used it up last time. It's down in the car.
Sounds good. Yeah, he and probably he and
How many speakers have we got this time?
that we need to remind everybody to raise their hand before
I haven't heard of anybody having any opposition.
What's that?
For Tony Brown.
Oh, do you hear about that ahead of time? Or?
Usually there's some rumbling you'll hear,
carrying on
but I haven't heard anything or anything, anybody.
No.
They're lucky I'm not sitting on the board.
How are you doing?
Of course it is. I was stupid
Great,
enough
thank
to-
you.
I've been stupid enough for 19 years.
I say, one time it can be forgiven, you know?
15 minutes, that's it.
Same thing as town chairman, I've been that for 40 years.
45 minutes, I think. Last time, that was just
I
long.
hate it. We were in Wisconsin Rapids for the state cross-country meet, and it was snowing sideways. It was freezing, and those kids are in shorts, and it was awful.
I don't need every little minuscule
I don't think
thing.
I have time to sign these right now. Do you want to sign them first? Just us? You sign them first, then I will later. I'm out of time here, Ruth. With me, more often than not.
I thought of that several times.
I thought Jerry's coming tonight. I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard
Draw
any.
some attention.
Have you heard from Jerry Lauer?
It's not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have his schedule anymore.
Got him in a meeting. No, he went home.
Usually he would.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
That's okay. You don't, if Jerry's coming. Okay, thank you. Okay,
I was at a meeting with him last night, and he didn't say anything about not coming.
and he's not working?
Who's it,
He is
Terry?
working? Oops, he's working.
So don't text them?
And just in case.
Yeah, that's, I thought, I kinda got that impression too, but
Thanks.
it's in plain
Be your
format.
fast signer.
Oh,
Okay, is it 7? Is it? Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Sheriff County Board of Supervisors. This is our regular monthly meeting and the 2020 county budget public hearing. All right, Megan, would you please do roll call?
Mr. Bonfiglio.
Here.
Mr. Piaski.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Cap.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Jarvis.
here.
Mrs. Colada.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Lauer. Mr. Kirschner.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Mr. Cap, second by Mr. Eckstein. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we'll have the approval of the minutes of the October 15, 2019 monthly meeting. Oh, okay. Just wait. We'll do this and then we'll do that.
I'll approve the minutes.
Okay, motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion by Peterman, second by Bonfiglio. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And now we'll do a silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dive bombed by a wasp.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. A wasp came flying by
And on a
buzzed
month
my
where it's
ear.
veterans.
Yeah.
Okay, we will now do the 2020 budget public hearing.
See that thing there?
Anyone have anything to, do we have any questions or comments from? Seeing none or hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Moving on, public comments, we have none. Unfinished business, none. New business, reports and presentations, the county administrator's monthly report. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the County Board of Supervisors, members of the public that are present tonight. My report, I just want to update you on some things that have been going on since the last meeting. I know it's a short month because this month's meeting's earlier due to the budget calendar. The main things we're working on is the Complete Census Count Committee is in full gear. I want to especially thank Human Services employee Kate Surprise, who is chairing that committee and doing just a bang-up job. I'm not only just happy because she's doing a bang-up job, but getting complete counts for the census is very important to this county in terms of federal and state aid, and we have a rural county and a number of populations that are traditionally undercounted, so we are plugging away at that. Just for everyone's information, the Complete Census Count Committee is largely comprised of community leaders, particularly those in the churches and in the schools. I'm ashamed to say that those institutions tend to have more credibility than government, so we are seeking their assistance and making sure that everybody's counted next April when the census takes place. The other thing that we're working on, and this is the real big project, is the Buildings Renovation Committee. The first meeting of that committee was October 1st. We've had 2 meetings of the committee. Last night we had a meeting of the Request for Qualifications Subcommittee. Request for Qualifications is we are seeking an architectural consultant to provide us data and information to guide us on what we want to do as far as renovating these buildings. There's a lot of different proposals on the table, so an expert will be able to come in here with an objective eye and to give us information so that we can make sound decisions to best use the buildings, and in doing so will reduce the cost of operating buildings and by extension the cost of county government. The next meeting of that committee is December 3rd. That's a public meeting, so the public is invited. And I just want to back up for a minute. The next meeting of the Complete Census Count Committee will be November 21st. The Buildings Renovation Committee, December 3rd. I think I misspoke. The other thing I wanted to mention is on Saturday, October 19th, the community fair at the Watoma Senior Center. I was present for that. Some county departments were there, as well as some private institutions in the community. It was a good crowd, a great success, and the county was represented quite well at that event. On Monday, the 21st of October, Mrs. Collada and I went to Dodge County for a meeting of the Inter-County Coordinating Committee. That's a consortium of 7 South Central Wisconsin counties, including Waushara. The topic of discussion was broadband internet access, and that's something that we are looking at, not just in terms of this building and being able to be more efficient for county government, but the lack of broadband internet access is really a handicap for rural America in terms of economic development. I'm sure, as you're all aware, many businesses, in fact, I would say all businesses, use the internet in the regular course of business, and those slow internet speeds harm us for business expansion and business relocation, and also, quite frankly, harm us when we're talking about younger people who are used to and expect expect fast internet speed from relocating here as well. I was gone for about 10 days on vacation, and I caught up on a lot of reading, and I read about a county in South Carolina that pursued a grant with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to improve its broadband internet access. And at the directors' meeting at noon, Ms. Zowski informed me of an email that came through, I believe it was the Wisconsin Counties Association, that discussed the Evers administration has some grant monies as well, so we will be pursuing that. Be rest assured. The next meeting of the Inter-County Coordinating Committee will be, I don't know when it is next month, but what we will be talking about is the census as well. So these organizations that we belong to, and when we go and we talk to our colleagues in other counties, it's very helpful because we're able to share information and expertise and to do a better job of solving problems than we would be able to do on our own. On Thursday, the October 29th, I know Mrs. Collada and I, and I'm sure some other people, were at the Chamber of Commerce banquet, which was a big success. Upcoming events are this Saturday, November 9th, the Watershed Lakes Council meeting. I know Marty Wilkie's here, so she'll be there in this room on Saturday morning. Monday, and I'm not going to steal Bill's thunder, but this coming Monday is Veterans Day, and last year we had a ceremony out on the lawn to commemorate Veterans Day, but also the centennial of the end of World War I. We've decided to make that an annual event, so at 1 o'clock out there on the lawn, we will have a ceremony for Veterans Day, and we will be doing that every year. Wednesday, the 13th, myself and a number of other county officials, staff will be going to Stevens Point for the Wisconsin County Mutual Workers' Compensation Seminar. I know that doesn't sound like it's the most exciting meeting in the world, but the best way to handle workers' compensation claims is to avoid them in the first place, because they are very expensive. They result in employees not being able to work. That adversely impacts county operations. Costs us money not just in the payout, but also raises our workers' compensation rates. So we're being proactive, and we're trying to avoid those problems in the first place rather than to deal with them after problems occur. On Thursday, December 5th, myself and Chairperson Collada and Supervisor Eckstein will be traveling to the latest IPBEC meeting in Florence. That is, if it's not snowing. Friday, December 6th, though, the Wisconsin County Utility Tax Association will be meeting in Madison. I will be present. That's even more boring than workers' compensation, but I will say that we have made some real progress as far as the state of Wisconsin. Just for those of you who may not know, I know the board members are aware of this, but public utilities do not pay property taxes. They make payments in lieu of taxes. They make those payments to the state of Wisconsin. That system was set up decades ago to provide a pool of money to compensate local governments for the cost of infrastructure and the cost of taking action in the event of emergencies, and for the most part that's snowstorms, severe thunderstorms, et cetera, that have the effect of knocking out utility service to individuals. And that is to provide us the money to maintain that infrastructure and to assist the utilities in restoring service to individuals. The problem is, and this shouldn't be a big surprise, over the decades, the state of Wisconsin has been taking a larger and larger share of that funds. We seem to be making some progress on that, and I have a letter that I will forward to the county board probably later this week. So that is good news, and we'll be getting an update on our efforts in the legislature next year. One last thing is I know we're coming up on the holiday season, and since I do have the floor, I'd like to use this opportunity to make public commercial messages. The Waushara Food Pantry, as you know, provides food for impoverished residents of Waushara County. Thanksgiving is coming up. They have food for a lot of the staples at the Thanksgiving dinner, but one thing they are really running short of is turkeys. So I discussed this with the department directors at noon today, and I'm directing this to the board and to members of the public. If you're able, when you buy your Thanksgiving turkey, I know some stores have a buy one, get one free, or if you're able to go ahead and buy a second one, a frozen turkey, please, please, please deliver that to for the food pantry. If you have an employer or a loved one who has an employer that provides a coupon for a free turkey, please donate that coupon to the food pantry so that everyone in our community is able to have, at least on one day, that feast of plenty. And as we all know, the turkey is a central part of that. So I want to go ahead and put that plug in for the food pantry. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a Child Support Office Annual Report, Director Kim Stebbins.
Good evening. My name is Kim Stebbins, and I'm the Child Support Director here in Washington County. I am in charge of a staff of, there's 3 specialists in our office. We have about 11 to 1,200 child support cases that are receiving what's called 40 services. And we also have our Corporation Council, which represents our agency in court for our hearings. So I'll just go over the child support program for you tonight, just to overview our services and how things operate. So we are overseen by the federal level. The Office of Child Support Enforcement oversees the program. The Bureau of Child Support oversees the program here in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin submits a state plan to the Office of Child Support Enforcement and how we're going to operate the program here in Wisconsin, how it's going to be administered. And on the federal level, they develop all the administrative rules and performance standards, and they audit Wisconsin's compliance to those rules and standards. For every dollar spent on eligible child support activities, on the federal level, they give us 66% back through grants, and the state and counties fund 33% back. National impact on child support programs, you'll see how the impact is. 95% of child support goes directly to families. 5% is reimbursed back to the public assistance programs. 75% is collected through income withholding. So here in Wisconsin, we're a mandatory wage assignment state. So if someone is employed through an employer, we will send a garnishment to their employer to garnish their wages and send into the trust fund in Milwaukee to disperse to the family. So there isn't an option to pay or not pay if they are employed. So self-employed individuals will be able to send in a payment on their own. So that is allowed, and they'll be sent payment coupons to do so. The role of the circuit court in child support. So we will help individuals stipulate or come to an agreement, but ultimately the court makes the orders. We do not make the orders. They issue the support orders, change support orders. They conduct the support hearings. They will impose civil and criminal enforcement measures and remedies to collect child support for those individuals who are not complying. And they have the sole authority to handle custody, which is decision-making, placement, which is where the child stays, as well as visitation. Those are not the responsibility of the child support agency, although it does relate to how child support is calculated. When we're involved, at least gives an avenue for the families to come to court, come up with these agreements, because the circuit court can address all these issues. So when we're involved, it helps families come to get some parental rights to their child or children. So I think it's a very good thing when we're involved. So county child support agencies is not just the county on the county level in Wisconsin. There are 9 tribal child support agencies now in Wisconsin. So they can, if someone's a tribal member, they can request that the tribe take over the case. So that's an interesting thing. More and more tribes have come on board. We enforce and establish child support orders. We also establish legal fatherhood, which is paternity, giving fathers their rights to the children if someone can voluntarily, put their, father's name on the birth certificate, both parents would sign and notarize, voluntary paternity acknowledgement form that goes to the Vital Records Office in Wisconsin. Otherwise, there can be a court judgment for paternity. So those are two ways right now. There is a legislative bill in the process for another avenue through genetic testing, administrative paternity, but that is not in effect yet. In Washera County, our workers are about 350 cases per worker. Other counties, obviously, they're larger and they can have a larger number of caseload. We receive our referrals through Human Services most of the time for public assistance benefits that are received. But somebody can come in and apply for our services just by a simple application. Doesn't cost us anything to apply or have us help you out at all. We also establish health insurance orders, so if someone has health insurance available at a reasonable cost through their employment, we do send a national medical support order to the employer, and they're actually ordered to enroll the child or children on private health insurance if it's available, taking the child off of Badger Care, which is a public assistance health program. So that is a very good thing that we have here. Two of the things that our staff does in our office, we take calls, answer questions to individuals, we record all the calls or office visits that come in, so everything's documented. We draft and enter all the court orders into our system. It's called the KIDS system. We interview participants, gather the data, schedule appointments and hearings. If there's liens on property, we can negotiate lien payoffs. We calculate the child support, and we also will assist payers to programs. There are a few employment programs that we can refer parents to if they need some employment assistance. It's limited here in Washera County, but we do have a program that we can refer them to. There are some administrative enforcement measures. Those are some of them are just behind the scenes things that are done by calculation in the system. Liens can also just automatically go on a property if you're so far behind in child support. We can deny a passport, original passport, or a renewal of a passport, so we can't go on a Jamaican vacation when you owe thousands of dollars in back child support. We can seize bank accounts, suspend licenses, hunting, fishing licenses, things like that. But those are all, there's a due process for all these things. They are given a notice saying this is going to happen if you don't, negotiate. They have a right to a hearing and all the, you have your rights. But if they don't contest any of this, then these things automatically go into effect. Our biggest collection a lot of times is through tax intercept in the spring. So how are we performing in Washera County? So we have performance standards on the federal level, and you'll see in the county child support agency compared to the statewide rate, there's an 80% benchmark. The paternity establishment can be greater than 100% because it's calculated by dividing the number of paternities established in the current year by the number of non-marital births in the prior year, so there's a higher percentage. Support collection rate, we're just under the 80%, but we're higher than the statewide average. Arrears collection rate, so if there's an arrears that are owed and we collect even $1 on it, we get credit for collecting something on that arrearage. We're just under the 80%. That's probably one of the harder things to collect on. So Wisconsin Bureau of Child Support said they oversee us in through a check or a money order. We don't take cash. We'll forward it to Milwaukee. They receive all the payments and disperse it. You'll see Wisconsin impact, some statistics up here for you. $658 million collected annually and paid to families in Wisconsin. No, some more information on Wisconsin families. So child support represents 58% of family income for children living in poverty. Child support agencies help reduce child poverty rates, establish parental rights. They promote the involvement of both parents in the lives of children. Children that receive child support are more likely to graduate high school and less likely to enter the criminal justice system. So we wouldn't be successful without our staff and our very hardworking staff we have. Just not only my staff that I have, but it takes, you know, collaboration between us, the Corporation Council, the courts. So I'm very proud of what we do here in Waushara County. If you ever have any questions on any of these things, just let me know. But that is basically all I have for you today. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Stebbins?
Do you see the total number of cases declining over time that you're handling? Or, yeah, so it's 350 cases per worker roughly, and you know, and do you see that number declining over time at all?
It's been steady.
Pretty steady.
Yeah, I mean, many times as you have children who emancipate or there's more babies that are born, so it's been pretty steady here in Waushara County. All right, thank you very much.
Next, we have Veteran Service Office Annual Report, County Veteran Service Officer, Bill Rosenau.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the public.
It's the same.
Hang on, see. Have it. Oh.
No, it's not inflatable either.
No.
I'll just talk a little louder. I'm only gonna take about the next 45 minutes or so to go over some really dry.
Okay.
Great.
No, I'm gonna keep it really short. In front of you, you're gonna find my annual report for 2018. I've included an annual charity report and an economic impact statement with trends from 2002 to 2018. I'm not gonna bore you by reading these slides, but I do want to highlight some things that I saw. In 2018, we did see an increase in business and a pretty significant increase in economic impact. We were able to come in under budget by a fairly large amount. That's mainly because we had an empty seat in the office for a couple of months. And because we had an outgoing and an incoming, we were able to cut our training budget in about half. All right, so some stuff I really wanted to highlight. I asked Professor Steve Deller with UW Extension to put together an economic impact statement, and as always, he went a little overboard. You have the complete reports in front of you if you want to go through them, and I'm welcome to a call during the week if you have any questions about it. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We do have a declining veterans population nationwide, but that downward trend is not mirrored by a downward trend in fiscal impact. Quite the opposite, and the next couple of slides are going to be pretty telling. I do want to point out that the VA population numbers that they have and the numbers that I have differ pretty significantly. And that's because we measure things a bit differently. They're going off a 2010 census with an algorithm, and I depend on veterans self-reporting or dying in order to get them off my books.
So there's statistics there on both sides. As with anything, there's two sides to every story, and the truth somewhere in between. Even with the hard numbers, things that the VA can see and report very solidly, things like disability compensation, that's actually monitored by zip code, and it does not take into account the number of seasonal veterans we have in the area. All right. So this is a percent of population that are veterans, and something really significant here. Waushara County is the red trend line, and you'll see that that's significantly higher than both the state and national trends. So we have a larger population of veterans in Waushara County than, than the average across the nation and the state. Right now, veterans comprise between 8 and 9% of our county population. This is just a little different look at population. This is looking at members getting ready to leave the service, a couple of different algorithms in there for death rates, birth rates, et cetera, projected individuals joining the service from the area. And that trend line is projecting that we actually shrink quite a bit. My trend line is a bit different than that. It does not take into account seasonal veterans, which are pretty significant in Waushara County. Currently working on more accurately getting a better hold on the deceased veterans in Waushara County. That's going to be a several years project. I'm working with cemeteries right now. And now we're going to take advantage of this census coming up. I'm going to get with Kate and see if we can't really encourage veterans to self-report. Rural populations are underreported on the census, and veterans even more so. Keeping in mind the declining veterans population, I want to point out the actual increase in compensation and pension benefits coming into Waushara County. We're closely paralleling both the state and federal trend lines, not quite up to the national average as far as income per veteran, but we're keeping ahead of the state average, and you'll see a little uptick between 2017 and 2018 that's not present in the other trend lines. What this does, and this is one I've been kind of focusing on a bit over the last couple of years. This is utilization and expenditures for VA healthcare. And we trend lower, primarily because we don't fall under any VA medical center's coverage umbrella. And quite honestly, the closest VA medical center is an hour and 15 minutes away. The closest facility about 45 minutes away. So we have less utilization. There were some law changes that went into effect earlier this year that may have a major impact on that. The Mission Act is creating a network of healthcare providers in the community that veterans can see at VA expense. That network is in the process of being built right now, but I can see this trend line changing dramatically, and it is a focus to get more veterans depending on the VA healthcare system. All right, bottom line, what does that mean? Federal money coming in because of this small sector of the population is pretty significant. Looking at these numbers, they make a lot of sense to statisticians and economists. I'm neither one. So I actually had to call an economist and a statistician to see what it meant. When I was talking to Professor Deller, basically he said, look at that bottom line total effect. The economic impact as it rolls through the community can cause a dollar to be spent 4 to 7 more times, depending on the industry, agriculture, et cetera. But the economic impact of just the federal VA dollars coming in is equal to 122 extra jobs in the community. So that makes me one of the top 5 employers in Waushara County. That's actually a significant increase from the year prior, where we were equal to about 113 jobs. So the economic impact uptick was pretty significant, and I'm going to credit a lot of that to that wise decision of elevating that you guys made of elevating that position to an assistant CVSO. It's doubled our claimant power in the office. All right, as stated last year at this time, we can grow some of these numbers. I know we can grow the amount of federal dollars coming in from VA healthcare because we did it last year by concentrating on it and really pushing enrollment in VA healthcare. The biggest one that we can affect are disability compensation and pension. And that's just adding a little more expertise, a bit more time, unfortunately quite a bit more time, and research into disability claims. Unfortunately, to do that, we probably need more people. If I continue to see this upward trend in economic impact based on the increase in production, I'm going to be asking your permission, or I'm going to be talking to Mr. Civic about ways that we can find clerical support so that Brian and I can really concentrate on the nuts and bolts of disability claims, because that's really where we're bringing in those federal dollars. Subject to your questions.
Any questions? Thank you again for this. Every year you provide us with this standards for charity accountability. I appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's actually kind of eye-opening. I think there were a little over 650 veterans charities identified, and just the few on that form were actually fully reported, fully disclosed to the Better Business Bureau. Once again, my advice on charities, on charitable giving: give local, give often. If you spend it, if you give it to someone in the local community, you know it's going to be spent here, and you can hold that person accountable by looking them in the eye and say, "What did you do with my money?"
And don't forget, if you want to give it locally to Bill's office, that is also tax deductible. So.
Shameless plug for the commission fund.
Yes,
You bet.
it is.
I must say, you do a fantastic job at it.
Yes,
We appreciate that.
absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
That
Ms.
concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right, next we are going to have a presentation from the Historical Society and a Museum Annual Report. Vice President Dee Dee Jacobuski. Take a breath, Dee Dee, and don't be nervous.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Waushara County Historical Society and Museum has had quite an eventful year. Building and maintenance. Our number one priority this year was the improvement in the building itself. The small crumbling exterior wall at the north entrance has been carefully disassembled and rebuilt using the original granite block, restoring it to its original condition. Rebar was added internally to provide additional strength to last many years. A new support post was also installed to aid in the support of the roof overhang. The rest of the walls were tuck pointed and the concrete stairs were repaired. We have received bids for the electrical upgrading and have selected Krieger Electric to do the work. We are in the process of scheduling a day to have the work completed. I did speak with Mr. Krieger today, and he's scheduling about 3 weeks out. It has been a pleasure to work with David Picard from Buildings and Grounds, and we greatly appreciate his guidance through the process of getting these tough things done. Regarding the volunteers, WCHS had 13 adults logging over 4,300 volunteer hours this year. We continue to work with Human Services with juveniles in need of fulfilling community service obligations, and we'll soon be working with the county's FSET and W2 programs once again. Visitors came from near and far for tours, family research, and information on local history. 2 gentlemen flew in from Denmark just to come to Watoma to see the museum. 133 visitors came for tours, and 220 came to do research. These numbers do not reflect numerous requests or inquiries we receive via email, Facebook, phone, and those numbers do increase each year. We had the pleasure of having 80 third grade Riverview Elementary School students tour the facility in September. It has become an annual school outing during the students' Washira County and Community Unit in Social Studies. The kids love coming to visit and gathering from the large packets of handmade thank you cards and letters. The jail is a favorite area amongst the boys, and the children's room and the dolls for the girls. Our memberships have risen to 66 members, including 14 lifetime members. Participation in local events is important to us. This year included Canines for Veterans, the County Fair, Tri-County Thresherman Show, August Fest, and Business After 5, one of which brought over 100 people into the museum. Regarding social media, our Facebook page traffic has increased drastically, with nearly 4,000 Facebook friends and 1,600 followers. We use the Facebook platform to educate, entertain, and spark memories of our county. We have held a 2-day Brat Fry in Wild Rose during the car show. It was a success, and we look forward to doing more around the county next year. We are recently registered with Thrivent Choice Dollars through Thrivent Financial. Thrivent distributes a portion of its charitable grant funds through the recommendations of its members. We have received other donations from other similar programs, which is a tremendous help. Facebook's Network for Good is another way we raise funds to help offset the cost of the necessary supplies needed for archiving. We received a very generous gift of $10,000 from the former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice John P. Wilcox, which will be used in the tuck pointing of the museum building. I have been researching the history of the 3 courthouses the county has had, and I eagerly share my discoveries with Bob Civic and David Picard. One of the things that I have learned is that inside the 1928 cornerstone, in the northwest corner of this courthouse, is a metal box that holds photos, newspapers, and the original plans of this building. I plan to create a chronological book including all the photographs, the newspaper articles that I have found, and provide a copy to the county. We have offered our services to assist Greg Granite and Germania, as they have both recently formed historical societies for their areas. We're happy to help them in any way that we can. Some Washira County items were on display at the Oshkosh Public Museum this summer. We received a request for specific items, and it was nice to have some of our things for viewing in another county. In closing, I would like to say one more thing. The Washira County Historical Society and Museum is so much more than an old building housing old stuff. We preserve the history. We care about the people, the old buildings and homes that stand and once stood throughout our beautiful county. It is our job at WCHS to ensure that it is not forgotten. So much of it has. We feel an obligation to dig deep into the archives in history books, newspapers, various records, file drawers full of photographs, obituaries, and even glass negatives. Compiling that information, we then fit the pieces of the past together and share the stories. Thank you all so much for your continued support.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dee? If you haven't been to the museum lately, please go. I've been there a couple years ago, and the museum has improved tremendously since Dee Dee has been working over there. The building committee went over a few weeks ago, and I think everybody was very pleasantly surprised at what they found over there, and I think you've done a very, very good job. Thank you very much.
you.
And Dee Dee, I think you do a good job for what limited resources you have.
Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate that.
And Dee Dee, I'm assuming that that box is still in that cornerstone?
The box is still in the cornerstone. I did locate a newspaper article when I was digging, and I did not know that cornerstone was there. I never even noticed the 1928. And it says that there's a metal box within the brick, and it placed the newspaper articles regarding the devastating fire of Courthouse Number 2. Photographs of the county board at the time who voted to reconstruct on the same location, and the original plans.
And nothing of value.
I don't know if it,
Nothing of value. We don't want anyone digging up the cornerstone.
it's up pretty high too, so.
Didn't say what was in it at all?
Just those items, I don't know if it was listed in its entirety or if it's, there's additional things, and maybe they just listed a few things, but it would be interesting to know.
Gotta be something, a wick and a match.
The anniversary date's coming up in a few years, so maybe crack that open.
Kind of new courthouse anyway.
Great. Any questions, any other questions for Dee? Thank
No.
you very much. It was a very good report. Thank you. All right, consideration and possible action on the following resolutions. Resolution number 34-11-19, resolution approving the Waushara County 2020 budget appropriation. Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Kirschner to approve. Any questions?
No, I'd just like to state that my well-documented opposition to that one particular matter is still in effect.
Right. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mrs. Coletta,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
No.
Mr. Kirschner,
Yes.
Mr. Bonfiglio,
Yes.
Mr. Piaski,
Yes.
Mr. Tim,
No.
Mr. Cap,
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein,
Yes.
Mr. Jarvis,
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next, we have resolution number 35-11-19, a resolution amending resolution number 07-03-19, authorizing fund balance restrictions, commitments, assigns, and reappropriation of specified funds from 2018 to 2019. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Eckstein. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. King. Any questions or comments? All right, again, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner,
Yes.
Mr. Bonfiglio,
Yes.
Piaski,
Yes.
Mr. Tim,
Yes.
Mr. Cap,
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein,
Yes.
Mr. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Coletta.
Yes. Okay, next we are going into closed session. This is a motion to convene to closed session pursuant to 19.851G Wisconsin Stats for conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body was rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to involve discussion on opioid litigation. Motion by Mr. Kirschner to go into closed session, second by Mr. Jarvis. We'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner,
Yes.
Mr. Bonfiglio,
Yes.
Mr. Piaski,
Yes.
Mr. Tim,
Yes.
Mr. Cap,
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein,
Yes.
Mr. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Colada,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, if you'll excuse us for a little